souls to rescue, there are souls to save. Sing the light, sing the light, sing the light, sing the light, sing the light.
We're delighted that you're watching this video today. You're watching the January meeting of the Preachers Forum at the Summerdale Church of Christ in Summerdale, Alabama. And today we have gospel preachers present who are going to make reports on mission work all over the world. We're excited that you're watching. Stay tuned. It'll thrill your soul when you learn of all of the great good that's being done by churches of Christ throughout the world.
My name is John Hackett. I'm the Youth and Family Minister at the Gulf Shores Church of Christ. I'm grateful to be here. I'm excited. So I want to share with you some works that we have going on. Before I say that, one of the things I thought about coming here today and knowing that everybody's got their works and stuff is that I want you to do a favor and turn off the TVs. And don't listen to the news so much and all the negativity about how Christians today, people are turning away from the church. Because in other areas of the country and other areas of the world, as many of you have known and seen involved in missions, that's just not true. Matter of fact, the works I'm going to talk to you about today just blew me away, especially the one in Greece. Greece was not, and still not, one of our main works that we even support. I want to share a quick story about that. I usually go over to Africa and work in Kenya. Also, we do Costa Rica. We go with Summerdale this past summer. Summerdale and Robertsdale, we had a bunch of our kids together and some adults, and we went over there and worked. But Athens, Greece was one of those places that I had the opportunity to stop over this year. And it was more of a personal thing for me, I'll just be honest. There was a young lady in my dad's youth group back in the 70s when I was 3 months old. She was a first-year college student at junior college there, was invited by a young person that had been in the youth group and was now in the college to come to a devotional in church. She came, she met my father while she was there. He was the part-time youth minister at the time, worked full-time at a bank. Started studying the Bible with her, with my mom and my dad, and ended up getting baptized. Her parents, on the other hand, were going through a terrible divorce, bad home life. As soon as her father heard that she was baptized, kicked her out of the house. She called my dad up and said, "All my stuff's in the front porch." My mom and dad, with me in a car seat, pulled up to her house, and there was all her stuff, loaded it up, took her to our house, and she lived with us for about 3 months. It was kind of like my living nanny. Grew in her faith, finished her first year at college, junior college, with the discussions with some other people at the church, the young people there, decided she wanted to go to Christian University. My father then, because of the bank he worked at, helped get the financing to send her to Abilene Christian back in 1974. She happened to sit next to a guy named Dino Roussos in chapel every day. Dino and her married, and now she's lived the last 42 years in Greece as a missionary's wife. Many of our Faulkner students, and some of them, I don't know if I'll see them here, many of our Faulkner students that are now youth ministers in our area have been in Dino's house. The church I'm going to show you is the church that they work with, because now Faulkner teams up with them in Harding as well and goes over and works with this congregation. My dad and I had planned on stopping here. He invited my dad to speak there. My dad and I had actually planned on this trip before my dad got sick, and my dad never got to go. So when he asked me to come by on the way to Africa, I said, I'm coming. I'm going to do it. And what I saw there was amazing. First of all, we flew all night. I know 10 minutes, and this was where I go to church, so I'm going to go through. Dino is also, he's got his degree in Bible. He's also got his degree in archaeology and tourism over there. He's got a master. This guy is incredible. He speaks ancient Greek, modern Greek, and there's another Greek. There's like 3 different Greeks. He speaks some of the Arabic. Matter of fact, when we were there, he did the Lord's Prayer in the original language that Jesus would have spoken in Arabic, and it was amazing. We got off the plane. First thing he does, he takes us to Corinth. We need to go. How many of you have been to Corinth? Okay, go if you get a chance. He showed me where Paul had been. He should have walked around. The guy knows all kind of stuff. showed us where the synagogue was. And then he took us back to Athens on that Friday. This is the Father Church of Christ. Why I'm bringing this work up is because this work right now is a hotbed. All the Syrian refugees, all the Iranians and Iraqians, from all the things that have been going on in the Middle East, are flooding into Greece. And they're coming to this congregation as well. And this church is located right by a major subway in Athens, Greece. People can get right off from anywhere in town, and they're right there at this congregation. That Friday night, they feed the refugees, and they have a Bible study. So I'm still 36 hours of no sleep. Get there. He takes me to Corinth, about an hour outside the city. Says, okay, we get an hour to spend there. We drive back, pick up food. We go to the church building, and all these Iranians come running in. I mean, literally flooding into this building. They start having a Bible study. Then he asked me to preach at 7 o'clock at night. Now, I don't know about you, but when 48 hours is coming close to no sleep, you don't know what's going to come out of your mouth. But I was glad to do it. I preached for him. After I preached for him, we had two respond. We had a guy from Turkey who was Muslim, and a young lady with her baby that was there. She'd been studying, and she's from Iran and was Muslim. They both were baptized in Christ. There was a young man who was doing my interpreting. He had never interpreted before. The other interpreter didn't show up on time, so he was 18 years old but could speak English. So he was just there for the Bible study. He came up and started interpreting. Did a great job. It was his sister who was baptized. So this is, you can see the classes going on with the Iranians. Some Syrians are here. The stories, I know I don't have time. I don't have time to explain all the things. I'd love to share afterwards. One of the guys that's known in this church used to be an interpreter for Saddam Hussein and ran for his life because they were threatening to kill him and his family when the U.S. invasion and all that happened. And so he fled and got out of there. He now leads singing for the Church of Christ, the Father Church of Christ. It's fascinating. This is Debbie Russo's, the lady that my dad baptized back in the 70s, who's now the wife of Dino. And so they had me preach. This is the young man, 18, who was interpreting for his very first time and did a great job with it, I guess. They said he was doing good. I don't know if he was saying what they said. These are the ones that were baptized on Friday night. On Sunday morning, they have 3 services. They have their regular Greek service with all their normal members, but they also have a lot of refugees from the Ukraine. You know, we got somebody talking about Ukraine a lot. The war-torn area of Ukraine, they're flooding this area. There was 3 teenage girls that their family had flooded. They were beautiful young ladies, beautiful singing. It was really wonderful. They sang a song for myself and Tyler and some of the others that were visiting. They were there. I preached that morning. The afternoon, I got to run to the Parthenon for about an hour. If you've never been to the Parthenon, it's all uphill. I was still in dress suits, dress shoes, everything. Ran around, sweat to death, and came back in time to preach for the evening service, which was, the Parthenon. It looks like we spent a lot of time. We got to go to Mars Hill. 1 hour. That was it. When we came back to the church, I preached that night, and then the interpreter was baptized, and one other gentleman from Iraq. Fascinating work. And so that was my time there. Read on the stuff I gave you, because right now they're trying to buy this building because they put it up for sale. We don't need to let them lose this building. And so if you're a church or congregation would love to help, please consider helping them raise the money to buy this building so they can keep that building and keep this ministry going. It's a great ministry. Then I went on to Kenya. Kenya itself, I'm going to skip the video because I don't have time for it. But when you get there, this complex is a huge Christian school, Christian college, technical college, but we also have the IPCM Bible building. Right now, we just recently teamed up with Sunset School of Preaching, who's going to help with the curriculum on it to continue going. The big thing was that this area that we're in is Eastleigh. If you're not familiar with Eastleigh, it's where they built the bomb that blew up the U.S. Embassy. It was in the same neighborhood back in 1998. Also, the guys that shot the mall a couple of years ago in Nairobi, they all lived and came from this neighborhood. A lot of Somali Muslim population, but the church there is converting and winning souls and converting these Muslim people to the point where they're having to change locations constantly because of the threat for their life. And so the fascinating work. But the ministers there, they have a preaching school that the congregations all over East Africa decide who they want to send, and they recommend their preachers for the school. And when the preachers come to the school, they come because the congregation wanted them to preach for them. So they're local men. They come, they spend 1 year on the campus. Before they were living off the campus, but now, because of while it was money raised, while I was there, the 4th floor we've turned into a full dorm, plus an apartment for visiting missionaries and ministers and things that want to come. And so now, through teaching some classes in schools, the chapel, the dedication we had, we cut the ribbon on the dorm that now can sleep all traveling ministers that spend 1 year getting biblical study and a certificate in Bible so they can go back to their home congregations, native kingdoms, teaching their own people with knowledge that they've learned from people like us and scholarly Bible teachers that come from the States and work in this program. And now they have a place to stay. Healing Hands built us a water tower. So now we have our own water, we have our own facilities, they can all be self-sustained there. And so that's what I did this summer. I went over there and helped with that, taught some classes for them, and when time's up. So just, as you see, I know all you're passionate about your works too, but just an exciting summer, and I'll be heading back over there this summer. So.
Already trying to get up here. Okay, my name is Ken Forrest, and I preach here for the Summerdale Church of Christ. I have had the opportunity to go on 2 mission trips this year, and I can add an addendum to what Jerry had to say, in that if you go to Guyana, you go where I went, it is the most physically and emotionally demanding trip you'll ever go on in your life. And I've been on lots of missionary trips, but this was a challenge. So to see Jerry and the rest of his group in their environment down there is something else. Also, coming this year in July, I'll be going to South Africa. It'll be my 3rd trip to South Africa. I go with the Cree Paul Church. They've started a preacher school down in Somerset West, and usually go down there for about 2 weeks and teach Bible courses to the students. So I'm looking forward to that. However, my most often visited place, region of the world, is actually the South Pacific. I don't like those cold weather places, so I like to go where it's really warm and toasty. So all over the South Pacific. And in the South Pacific, you have basically 2 types of islands. You have volcanic islands, have lots of high mountains and jagged rifts in them. Places like Fiji and Samoa. These are down here in this area. And there are also places called atolls. They're coral atolls. And basically that's volcanic too, because I understand in order to create an atoll, you had a volcano that sunk into the ocean, or there was an underwater volcano, and then the coral, when that volcano became defunct, the coral grew around the rim of the volcano. And that over time created a land mass, and people who migrated through the Pacific, which there are thousands and thousands of islands in the Pacific, when they found a large enough island out there suitable for living and growing crops and such, they would populate those areas. So this past year, in addition to going to Guyana, back in February, I went to the Marshall Islands. Now, the Marshall Islands are in this stretch right here. To your east, you've got Guam, and to the west, you've got Guam. To the east, you've got the Hawaiian Islands, and those are thousands and thousands of miles apart. But the Marshall Islands, in particular, the place where I went, the capital, Majuro, you have an atoll. An atoll looks like this. You can imagine this is the crater of the volcano here. So you're on the rim, basically, of the volcano, and the land is created by the remnants of coral that was there. So this is the lagoon side, and then this is the Pacific side. Here, pretty shallow, When you get out here, there's basically no cresting of the ocean floor, so it basically drops off thousands of feet in a great abyss. So you're just kind of sitting up here as though you are on a mountain in the middle of the Pacific. And you'll see here that the land is only a few feet above sea level. So they have a lot of problems with flooding when the high tides come. They have a thing called a king tide, which basically wipes out the whole island a few times a year. This is the site as you're coming in the aircraft. You're beginning to think, wait a minute, this is pretty thin, and I'm on a big plane. So we're going to have to land on this thing. There's basically one road, you see here, that kind of runs through the middle. It goes from a place called Rita to Laura. It was originally developed by, guess who? Us, the Americans, during World War II. This was a major base for the Japanese. Once the Japanese were ran out, the United States took possession of it, and we paved roads and so forth, and then named the cities on either end of it according to popular movie stars at the time. Okay? Lagoon, Pacific. Little houses scattered about. And there's your landing strip. And as you're approaching, you kind of look out that side, and look over there outside, all you see is water. One of the more difficult places for people to land. Thankfully, we did okay. All right, so here's the big airport, and you can imagine it's about 90 degrees. It's hot. Everybody's trying to get their stuff. A lot of excitement and crowded. A lot of people everywhere. Here we go. We arrive. Hey, welcome. Give you a little lei for your neck. This is the church building there in Majuro. The brethren built it themselves. Nice facility. We have Bible classes here. I participate in the Pacific Islands Bible College, and that's been going on for many years. Robert Martin, who is based out of Forest Park Church in Atlanta, Georgia, has been heading that up. He began his work in Fiji, then moved on to Samoa, then Saipan, and then he realized, just like Jerry was sharing with us, that there are some places in the world where having school in a located place is not conducive. So what they decided to do is, instead of having the students come to a hard location, we're going to take the school to them. So that's what we do, and teaching the Bible courses for the purpose of edifying the church and also strengthening preachers in those areas. So Robert's actually sitting on the far left side of there. There I am. You show up, they give you a marmar. Marmar doesn't feel really great on your head, especially if you don't have a lot of hair up there. And so it smells good, but it's a little bit irritating. So we teach the Bible classes. There's a lot of different kinds of critters up there. This guy's about this big. And I don't know about you, but I'm not a spider lover. So I saw this fella as I was teaching, and then one night a crab came walking in, and I couldn't see it very well, and I imagined that this crab was another one of those, and so I was getting pretty nervous. And the preacher jumps up out of his chair, runs over, grabs that crab, and throws it out the door, and I about had a heart attack. Okay, so also, you go and you teach in Bible courses, if you do that sort of work. You have a period of time during the day that you're assigned that particular work, but there's free time in order to do your evangelism work and edification, and that's what we're doing here. We're going around the villages, and we're, like we did in Guyana, trying to develop Bible studies with folks. And by the way, you'll notice the ground is just covered with coral everywhere. Seriously? Okay, Sam, we're buddies. This is Robert Martin here. Again, we're in a teaching setting. The water's gone out. It'll be coming back in very soon. This is Eldon, one of the leaders of the church there. Very much a pillar of that work, where they're discussing and encouraging him in his work. It's also very depressed poverty-stricken location. So you see just garbage. Where do you put your garbage on an atoll out in the middle of the South Pacific? You don't put it on a barge and send it to another state. It just piles up everywhere. So there's a kind of a stench associated with the place as well. Now here's Eldon. These are the ancestors. You don't have any place to bury them, so we just put them on top and put a nice concrete form around them. Beautiful scenes. Bible study. This is Eldon's son. I had a study with him. Eventually, he decided to obey the gospel, and his father baptized him. This is the preacher there, Danny Jim, and his wife, and he does excellent work. And one of the things with those works is that we want to build the indigenous people to carry on the work themselves, not send a missionary down there. Have to support him. So this is a support effort in order to create indigenous churches that can ultimately support themselves. And then there's Ken in his sandals enjoying his time teaching the Word of God. I want you to see this. All of these sandals kicked off, and the kids come pick them back up. There's the future. And not just for Majuro, but any place like where you go. We've got to be sure that we lay a good foundation, especially with our children. There's Danny Jim again. You can imagine in a lot of these places, that's 0 time. In a lot of these places, the leaders, they do everything. Maybe you've been in work like that. Well, that's Majuro, a little taste of it. And I appreciate everybody and the work that they do, but if you're like me, there are certain places in the world just you have a passion for. And I look forward to the opportunity to go back to these places I share with you.
I'm David Sargent, a minister for the Creekwood Church of Christ. As we want to participate in carrying out the Great Commission, an area that one of our areas we're focusing in is in India. Very large country, as you know, and the area that's highlighted is the state of Andhra Pradesh. And it's a diverse area. And these are some stats of religions of India. Even the Christian religion, 2.3%, and that is in the broad sense of the term. But in the Rayali Church is an area that is the work that we support. Jayapal is the missionary. Rayali is in the country. It's in a district of Andhra Pradesh called East Godavari. I'm probably mispronouncing that, but it's in an area, again, out in the country, but a very lush area with a group of Christians, a large group of Christians. Jayapal, I'd like to know more about how he became a Christian and intend to learn. But he is a great leader in that area. His son Praveen is kind of following in his steps. And they have a great work going on. This is Jayapal, his wife Soba. Mike Edelman, his wife Nellie, and I made a trip to Rayali back in 2009. And my backside still hurts when I think about making that trip, because some of you made those long plane trips. But it was very enjoyable. We were treated like kings and a queen. But they're doing a wonderful, wonderful work. This is a picture of the church building with many of the congregation, the members of it in front. Very large congregation. This kind of gives you an idea of the works that they're involved in, that we help support. Christian Charitable Society is a name given to conform to government standards. In that predominantly Hindu nation, Christians are viewed as not welcome in many areas, and so sometimes they have to jump over some hurdles in order to be able to continue the work of the church. Bud and Joy Children's Home is part of their work. Bud and Joy is for Bud and Joy McDonald, that many of you know. And they're the ones that introduced us to Jayapal and the work here. And they've been supporting it for a number of years. Creekwood, the last 15 or 20. Song of Joy is for Joy McDonald. It's an educational center. It's a school in which many of the children in the children's home, but also children in the community come and learn at that facility and are taught the scriptures as well. There's also a preacher training school. When we were there in 2009, there were about 40 students in that preaching school. There are about 75 congregations, plants that have been formed in that area as a result of their efforts. There's also a vocational training center. This is the building. The bottom floor, when we were there, was built, and they're working on the second floor of the preacher's training school. And this was half of the students that were there when we were visiting. They're studying the Bible and also preaching at area congregations. This is a picture of the Bud and Joy Children's Home, the bottom floor. It's actually a very large structure, about 4 stories high. And again, there are a lot of orphans in India, and this children's home is helping in that area. Our names are in places where I couldn't get you back there if I wanted to, but they want to honor guests that come and assist with the work. And so this is Red Burleson was one of our church members that was very generous in the work, and so his generosity helped build that facility. And so while we were there, they dedicated the building, and so our names were put on there. But I also wanted to show you East Coleman, River Chase, and Creekwood support. These are some of the children in the children's home, and very warm, friendly. Nellie was a hit with those children. Beautiful children inside and out. Mike and I are having a good time with a lot of the boys as well. The educational center, the school, and there's a lot of children that come through there, and there's a lot more that they would like to be able to bring in. A lot of these are orphans. A lot of these are from the community at large. Giant Paul, you wouldn't be surprised, in this small town, is very well respected and does a lot of work, benevolent work, and is able to reach a lot of people. It's really a compound there that houses all these different things. So that's just a few snapshots of the work. When Mike and Nellie and I were over there, I think the whole trip was 10 days. But Giant Paul had us going to different locations and preaching, and it was refreshing to see so many open to the gospel. And it was thrilling to walk down from the Raleigh Church building just a mile or so to the river and witness about 51 people baptized into Christ while we were there. And it just was a reminder, as John was saying earlier, there are places in this world where the gospel is producing much fruit. And that was so refreshing to see those people so open to the teaching of the gospel. So among many good works is this work in Raleigh, India, that we're happy and just blessed to be a part of. Thank you so much.
60% of the world's population lives in Asia. Yet only 10% of our resources, Christian resources, people, workers, 10% of our financial dollars go to reach this part of the world, 60% of the world's population. We talk about the second coming of Jesus. We read about it, we preach about it, we study about it. Half our world never heard of the first coming. And we can do something about that. One of the largest supporters of missions in churches of Christ today is the government of China. The communist government of China. If you haven't heard about this China ministry, let me tell you what I heard back in 1999. I had sold my restaurant. I had went back to university. I was a 40-year-old university student studying ministry in Harding. And I saw a table, a display, kind of something like what Brother Jerry had here, set up about China. Benny had come and set something up, and I saw that, and I became very interested. because my wife and I were wanting to work somewhere with the church or for churches where the need was great and people were longing to know. And so what we heard about China grabbed our attention, because the universities in China pay us to come. They provide a house, an apartment for us to live in. They furnish it. They pay the utilities for us. We get a monthly salary that covers the needs of our food and transportation in the country. And so that just sounded too good to be true. We drove down here. I was still a student at Harding. We drove to Spanish Fort, Alabama to meet this man who had this table set up with this impossible claim. And after praying about that for a couple of months, we said, I have one more year of school, but if you can find a place for a family to go, we will go. He had never sent a family to China. He had helped 75 Christians go and teach in China from 1993 until 2000. The year we went, there were 27 of us that went in August of 2000. 27 new teachers that went to China. We were the first to take children. This ministry is fully funded. I've just got working on tax letters and everything over the weekend. We are fully funded for this year. We're not looking for funding. We need workers. I'm looking to come and speak in congregations. We were leaving Wednesday of this week, and during the 2-week trip that we will be on, we'll be in Tennessee, Oklahoma, and Arkansas, speaking at churches and Christian schools. When we go to the Christian schools, we find young college students who will graduate soon who are willing to come, but we don't find families. We find families when we speak in a local congregation. And I have some information packages that I hope each congregation here, I brought a dozen or so with me, and I know we've got 2 or 3 people from the same church, but if each congregation would take one of these to come and speak in your congregation, not to make an appeal for money, but to make an appeal for someone in the pew. You can have them back after a year or two, and they're going to be changed, aren't they? Because they've been somewhere and they've seen something that they've only heard others talk about. So that's the objective of the China Now ministry, is to find those who are willing to go, to train them and introduce them to a school. We're a bridge between those who are willing to go and those who haven't heard the story of Jesus. There's a DVD in here that you're not going to see today. This is one that can be shown to your elders, your missions committee, to your congregation. This is basically what I've just said, that little thing. The DVD that I want to show you today is about a family who answered that call recently, just a few years ago. We were the first family to go. Since that time, we've had 48 other families. I'm sorry, 49, because we've just had a family go this last fall from Spanish Fort. They actually took 5 children with them. And so we've had 49 other families who have come and have gone to be a part of this. So let's see this about this farmer from Kentucky, see what he has to say.
If you love your kids, you want them to experience the things that bring you joy. I take my kids in the tractor with me. I take them in the truck with me. I want to take them with me overseas also to tell people about Jesus. If you love your kids, you want them to experience the things that bring you joy. I take my kids in the tractor with me. I take them in the truck with me. I want to take them with me overseas also to tell people about Jesus. The last year, 2012, has been one of the worst droughts on record. There are places in this world that there is a spiritual drought because they have never heard the story of Jesus. It's almost like God is using us to bring rain. You get married, you have children, being involved in missions can become even more difficult. And I think that God plans that out that way.
Sometimes it's scary to take that big chunk of money out of your bank account and buy tickets and go, but it's a sacrifice worth taking. It's so worth it.
We never make a sacrifice that God doesn't pay us back over and over, more so, with joy over being obedient to what He's called us to do.
there's Beijing. What is close to Beijing that you really want to go to one day? The Great Wall, there it is. What if somebody says, oh, going to China is a tough, tough job. A kid can't do that. What would you say?
We can do it
How can we do it?
by trusting God.
That's right.
He may want them to spend their whole lives taking the gospel to people overseas. And if they've been exposed to that right from the start, then they won't be afraid of it. When people on the other side of the world see that, this person, he brought 3 kids with him to China. He brought his wife to China. He sacrificed his own money to be involved in this. This is something that's worth listening to.
And our kids contribute even at young ages. God has used them. We'd get in a taxi, and almost every taxi ride, Josiah or Micah would say, Daddy, have you shared the gospel with him yet? Or does he know about Jesus yet? They were curious about food. They were curious about their surroundings, wanted to explore, wanted to meet people. Just really no fear of talking to people, even though they were speaking Chinese to them. They're a part of our family. I mean, if we were separated from them, people wouldn't see them as representatives of our faith as well.
I just want to see in my children a legacy of obedience to the commands of Christ and a legacy of a heart for God that's bigger than the place where they grew up, that's bigger than their own small little world.
All kinds of mission opportunities that we have, but this is one that doesn't require very much financial dollars for any congregation to be involved in. Not only does the university in China provide housing for you, pay your utilities, they reimburse the round-trip airfare after teaching for 10 months. The monthly salary is about $900 a month. Teachers live on about half of what they make. They pay for their food, their transportation and phone. They're able to save about half of their monthly salary while they're there. So if student loans are the big thing that people raise money for here. They raise money to pay for their airfare and for student loans, single teachers that go. And so we're just looking for more people who would be willing to go. When we came home in 2005, Brother Benny had introduced over 350 teachers to China. Since 2005, we have found another 430 willing to go. And so that is 775 Christians have been part of the China Now ministry. Currently, about 75 are in the country. So please allow me to come and speak in your congregation. Not an appeal for money, but appeal for workers. You don't have to, your mission budget can fully support it because the government of China is going to be a part of that. So I've got some of these. Please take one of these back with you to your congregation, please. The gospel is good news. Can I get an amen?
Amen.
But it's only good news if it gets there in time. We are seeing a Jerusalem effect taking place in China. Go back with me to Acts chapter 2 very quickly. And you have these nations that come to Jerusalem for Passover and for Pentecost. 14, 15 different nations. And then what happens? They stayed in Jerusalem. And they stayed and they didn't, many of them didn't go home. And they stayed and they became in need. They sold property to take care of the need. And then persecutions broke out after the death of Stephen. And what happened in Acts 8? They were scattered. And what did they do? When they were scattered, it was the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker that were scattered. It wasn't the apostles. It wasn't the ones who had been to the Galilee school of preaching with Jesus. Everywhere they went, 8:4 says they told people about Jesus. They shared what they knew with someone who did not know. And that's what's happening in China. They are coming to the universities for education, to study. And when those who become disciples, those who become followers of Jesus, when they graduate, they are going out. They are scattering, not only in their country, but to other parts of the world. And they're taking the story of Jesus with them.
I appreciate Billy inviting me to come talk to you today. My name is Thad Butts. I'm the principal at Snook Christian Academy, right down the road here, one block down the road. You can come visit us anytime you want to. But I enjoy being there and enjoy being part of this congregation here at Summerdale. But I've enjoyed listening to all the different works that are going on around the world, and long-term and short-term missions and churches that are involved in different places. And that gets me excited because I love seeing how people are able to go out and teach and use their opportunities with people that they know and the connections that they have to teach around the world. Right now, I have a cousin who's in Turkey long-term. She's going to be there probably about 10 to 15 years. That's a pretty big commitment on her part. I don't think I could do that, but I'm glad that she can. I know that my brother has been to Guyana several times with Dave Miller and others, and done a great job there and loves that work there. I know I've been to inner city Miami and done work there. I've had cousins. I've been to Lithuania and other Eastern Bloc countries, and Japan, I think, for a couple of months one summer. And so I know a lot of people have been around the world, and my family has been in different places, and I've enjoyed seeing and hearing about all of those. So, but all of us, as someone said earlier, we all have our pet places, and so mine is Costa Rica. I'm involved in 2 missions I'm going to talk about today, but Costa Rica is, I really have a special place for that country in my heart, because I was invited to go there by our preacher when we lived in Florida, in Eustis, Florida. Dr. Joe Roberts said, "Hey, why don't you go with me to Costa Rica?" And I said, okay. I'd never been out of the country before, and so it was a good opportunity to do that. I'd always said I wanted to, never had actually buckled down and done it. So I go with Joe down there, and of course, as all of you know, when you go somewhere like that, you fall in love with the place, you fall in love with the people, and it becomes somewhere that you think about and pray for and want to be a part of more often. So that was our first trip in 2011. We do Costa Rica work through Torch Missions, and it's an organization that is able to take young people who they concentrate on mostly and go to places like Honduras and Costa Rica. They used to go to other places as well, but now they focus on those 2 countries. John goes with us now, and John actually helps head up that trip to Costa Rica. Does a great job with that. He actually should be doing this talk, probably doing a lot better job than I would. But one thing I love about this situation of going to somewhere like Costa Rica is, that country is about 70% Catholic, and so when you go down there, it's not like going. It's probably very much like going to other Central American and South American countries, in the sense that you're not telling people things about God they never heard before. You're talking to them in a different way about the Bible and what the Bible means to us. But there's a language barrier there, of course, as there is in most countries, except for Guyana probably. So we have to have interpreters or translators that come in and help us out with that. So when we go down there, usually it's a 10-day trip. We probably spend, when you add it up, 80, 85 hours on that trip, serving people, teaching people, edifying the church, doing service projects for the country or for the county or for the city. We do a lot of evangelism in the sense that we go into the public schools there in Costa Rica, and we do vacation Bible schools and invite them to the gospel meeting that we're hosting. And we're able to do a lot of things like that, work with kids at the schools and give them a little different perspective on things other than just Catholicism. So it's a really neat thing to do. And the fact that the government will let us and actually encourages us to go into the public schools there is one of the neat things that you find in other countries, as most of you are aware of. So we go there, we do that evangelism, we put in those 80 plus hours, we bring a lot of kids. I started taking my oldest when he was 12, and now my youngest is 12, so I took him this past summer, which made my wife have to go, because she was not really keen on flying anywhere, but especially over the Caribbean. And so she went this year. So for the first time this summer, I had my wife and both my kids with me. So Lincoln was 15 and Philip was 12. Got to go down there with my wife and experience that. That's the great thing, just like that video that we just watched. That's the great thing about these opportunities is, for me, is be able to do that with my family. That's not just me going by myself. I did that for several years as well. Then I started taking Lincoln, and now I've added everyone And that's something our whole family now is in love with. And Philip and Lincoln, my 15-year-old and my 12-year-old, personally, it's hard for me to go on a 10-day mission trip. To be honest with you, it gives me a lot of stress and anxiety to even think about having to take off work for 10 days to go down there and do this work, because I just think, when am I got to come back and do all this work when I get back? But I'll tell you, my kids and their love for this work and the love that they have to be able to go and work with other children, to go to work with other churches in another country, and to see that there's other people in the world that believe and that do the same things they do, even though there's a language barrier there, that is so impactful on them. And so they won't let me not go now. My kids won't let me not go, because they are completely in love with that work there. And it's a wonderful thing to be a part of. The great thing about Torch is that it's not one person kind of in charge of having to get this group together. It's not one church supporting it. It's a multitude of churches. As John mentioned earlier, we had Gulf Shores, Robertsdale, and Summerdale all represented this summer on our trip, and it's been that way for a couple of years now. And we plan for it to continue to be that way. I've taken kids from the school on this trip, and we go over there and go into Costa Rica and do these things. And so it's great to see that there's other people within our same county going together to work for God, rather than being in our separate congregations doing our own separate things. We're all working together for one purpose with the Costa Rican congregation. It's just a really, really, really neat thing to be a part of. The cost for these trips, a lot of people, and hopefully none of you, but I know that a lot of people have a lot of criticisms about short-term missions because of the cost, and they talk about how productive can it really be. Don't want to be there 7 to 10 days. But I'm going to tell you, the biggest thing about short-term missions to me is the impact it has on me. I hope that God's able to use me to impact other people. I hope that they learn the truth. I hope that they come to the knowledge of the Bible and they're baptized into the blood of Christ and all that. But to be honest with you, the impact on me is worth it to me. If you take yourself or your children or your spouse and you remove yourself from our situation here in this country and your comfort zones and all the things that you're part of, you go to a different area and you put yourself in a situation where you have no responsibilities except to talk about God and teach about God and to focus on these other people who are in these churches that are very small, that need support, that are not like we are. They don't have a congregation right up the road of 100, 200 people to do things with. They've got 20 or 30 people, and they may not ever see another Christian from anywhere in that country for the whole year. And for us to come down there and to work with them has a huge impact on me, because it makes me focus in on what I'm doing for God and focusing on God's work. So to me, short-term missions are worth it just from that standpoint. You remove yourself from your current situation, put yourself in someone else's shoes, and do something good for God. So I love Costa Rica, I love Torch Missions and what we're doing there. The other mission work I'm involved with is at the school. A lot of times we don't think about those things, but those of you that have been associated or are associated with Bobo Christian or some other Christian schools around the country know that's a great work as well. So we do 80-something hours when we're down in Costa Rica working with the churches there. We're building those Christians up. We're working with the preachers. We're working. John, this past summer, I got to work with the city workers. And so we had the mayor and all these important people there. And John was teaching them things that he's learned through strata leadership. And we got to use that opportunity to get in for the church. All those things are great. 80-something hours while we're down there. In our Christian schools, in our K-12 schools, we spend, just doing some quick math, we spend over 1,200 hours a year teaching these people about God and teaching these students about who God is and what God's plan for them is. So to me, I view my job every day that I do as a missionary. 1,200 hours a year, we're pouring into these kids and teaching them about Christ and helping them hopefully know more about God's plan for them and know more about the Bible. A short-term mission to Costa Rica, we're going to spend $1,600 to $1,800 when you include plane flight and everything while we're there. At the school, we spend about $75,000 a year added to our budget just to be able to teach Bible. So if you think about that, the economics of spending 1,200 plus hours per child. We have 285 kids, and we pour 1,200 hours of talking about the Bible to them, and we get to do that for $75,000. That's pretty good. So I get excited about that mission work too, because it's an opportunity for us as God's people to use something like an education to teach them also about God. So my heart is very much in Costa Rica and the love I have for those people there and the churches there, that they really need us. All these churches around the world need us in America to come help them out and to edify them and build them up and strengthen their faith. And also I'm very excited about working at the school, because that's an everyday, all-day thing, is to teach these young people about God and help show them the truth. We had a new family this year, just to give you one example. They came to the school, they'd never been in private education. They moved from Michigan, I believe, or somewhere up north. And they didn't know anything about it. They just saw, just Googled it and saw on the internet and decided to come enroll their child, went through the whole process. Anyway, they're in my wife's class. This kid has never been to church in his life, didn't know anything about God. He asked her what a prayer was the first week of school. You know what a prayer was. They'd never prayed before. And how this kid's getting up in chapel, he's leading, singing, he's praying. The parents are texting my wife going, hey, we've never owned a Bible. What kind of Bible should we buy? What should we do? And those are the kind of things, you get to see that every day on his mission trips. We get to see it every day at school. And I just thank all of y'all for all that you're doing around the world. I'm sure that you do, but please remember all of our mission efforts in your prayers every single day. Thank you.
Brothers, I'm Brian Evans. I'm the preacher at the Eastern Shore Church of Christ over in Daphne. I have John Langham with me this morning. He is one of our elders and a long-time supporter of the work in Guyana. And I'm privileged to be here just to be among you this morning. To hear so many good reports and so many wonderful things that are happening across the world, it's just humbling to be able to be a part of that. And I appreciate the opportunity to come and talk a little bit about Guyana. Jerry has already talked about the campaign work in Guyana going on since the late 90s. In 2006, I had an opportunity to go to Lethem, Guyana, and sitting on the back porch of the guest house, several of us, including Tom Holland, came up with the idea of a need for a school of preaching. And before I knew it, Eastern Shore was head over heels involved in that work. And so today, Eastern Shore has the oversight of the Guyana Christian University. And we also have the oversight of Guyana Medical Missions. And I'm going to try to talk about both of them in the time that's allotted this morning. Guyana Christian University
I'll click it through.
Fine, go ahead. Guyana Christian University is located, co-located on the property with the Culver City Church of Christ in Lethem, Guyana. Lethem is the administrative center of Region 9, which is the Rupununi, or the grasslands of Guyana. All the way from Georgetown on the coast, you fly over the Guyanese rainforest. Most experts today will tell you that that Guyanese rainforest is the most pristine rainforest left anywhere in the world. Southern parts of Guyana abut the Brazilian rainforest. But Lethem is kind of in the middle in a grassland area. If you were to go straight on across, you'd cross the river and you'd be in Brazil, or on the border with Brazil. Here you have on the left-hand side, you have the Culver City Church of Christ. I don't know if this is the Culver City Church of Christ. Preacher's home is there. And this is the old school of preaching. And I'll show you some pictures in a minute that have been expanded. But let's go ahead. Did it work now? Okay, that's a little bit closer picture of it. This room here, you see the lattice work. That's the meeting classroom where the students down here has been the area where they live. This is a kitchen area. And on the very end are 2 apartments for instructors who go down from time to time. We have changed, made a little change in the way we do the schedule now. The men come in from whatever village they may be a part of. They will spend usually about a month in the school undergoing training every day from about 9 in the morning to about 4 in the afternoon. And then they go back to their villages. And they'll preach and teach and work in their local churches until the time for the next class comes, and then they'll come down. They have the opportunity to live here. Some of them have family, and they may actually live in Lethem or in Culver City. The students work, they preach, they teach every week. They are the ones who do the baptizing, and they encourage one another. They have a fine reputation in the communities in which they live. And these are students who come and they really earn their keep. And then when they finish, they will leave and they will go back to their villages where they will preach and teach. Just to give you a couple of quick success stories, Ernesto John, a very quiet man, came to the school. He went through our program, and when we got to the end, we were going to place him in one of the congregations that had been established by Brother Jerry in the campaign. But Ernesto had other ideas. He wanted to go across the river to Bonfim, Brazil. And he went over there on his own, planted a congregation which exists today. He's struggling. It's a difficult work. But Ernesto was so full of fire in his bones that that's what he wanted to do. Other brothers have gone to other areas, some of which in Anai that he mentioned concerning Charles Box. And they work very closely with each other and stage campaigns. One will go down and work with one brother. Then a few weeks later, he'll come up and work with him. And so these people are really working. They're doing the Lord's work without an American there to push them and guide them. In fact, what we're hoping for now is that the work will continue to grow to the point that that church becomes self-driving and self-sufficient. So it doesn't become an American church. It does not become an extension of the Lord's church in America, but it becomes the Church of Christ in Guyana. And that's what our goal is. Students are coming all ages. They are very studious. And as you lecture, they take down almost every word you say. They may be given tests at the end of the course. There are opportunities to meet one-on-one with the instructor, to ask questions. We teach them how to study the Bible. We tell them we do not want to make them into parrots who are just parroting what we teach in America, but rather know how to go to the Bible, study the Bible honestly, and to preach forth from God's Word. Students engage with one another in what they call morning encouragements. It's a devotional period. They lead the singing, they do the Bible reading, and they offer a period of devotion as well. They preach and teach in the congregation. They also preach and teach in congregations in the area when they're in town. Of course, when they go back to their villages, they'll help preach and teach in their home villages as well. The language of commerce in Guyana is English. And so we don't have a need for translators in the School of Preaching, which is a tremendous convenience. Now, there are in Guyana 9 recognized tribal groups. They were first set up and recognized when the British held Guyana as a colony. They still exist, and they still spend their time culturally in tribal activities. And they still speak their tribal dialects in the home. But when we're preaching and teaching with them, everything is done in English. Some of the students that we have had, including this brother here, Brother Riveros, actually retired from the public school system, where he was the superintendent of schools. Highly educated man in Guyana, but one of those who went through our School of Preaching and is still an important asset for us there as well. Let me add that the chairman of Region 9, which would roughly equate to an American governor, was a member of the Lord's Church, a faithful member of the Lord's Church, who would go home on the weekends to teach Bible classes in the local congregation. So we have a very good relationship with the local governments in that region. Innocent Simon is just one of the men, and I'm going to move through this very quickly. He is now in Sand Creek Village, where he works with the Church of Christ. He's from Shelton. He has 6 children, 21 grandchildren, and is a hard worker for the Lord in Sand Creek. This was one of our graduation ceremonies. If it had been up to Jerry Davidson, we would have been wearing robes for this, graduation gowns. It was only 95 degrees. And the only one who was not going to be wearing a robe, I think, was probably Jerry. But we convinced him and twisted his arm to let us do it without. But it's a big deal for them when they graduate from the school. This is one of the graduation ceremonies here. Let me talk to you very quickly about our work in the medical mission field here. This area here is an extension of the building you saw in the very beginning. This is the church building here. This is a waiting area, an open air waiting area for people to come in to be served by our medical teams who go down to Guyana. Now in Latham there is a hospital. At least there is a building with a sign out front that says it is a hospital. But the healthcare, the basic needs of healthcare are slight. They don't receive the kind of care that we would expect. They come in, we do a basic intake with them here, blood pressures, blood sugars, hemoglobins, hematocrits, things like that, move them into the examining room. Now the clinic was built with funds largely raised by Brother Tom Holland. This is one of the examining rooms that we use here. It's well equipped, items that have been donated, things that have been purchased. This is Dr. Andy Dukes, who is a physician in Fairhope. He goes down once a year. During the time that he's there, he will see somewhere between 400 and 500 patients a week. These are students who come from a nearby school that adjoins the property. The young lady whose back is to us here, and she doesn't like having her picture made, is Holland Chupek. She is a student at Mobile Christian. She went when she was a junior to help with our teaching. Andy Dukes and Kent Purser making house calls, which is something wonderful. And just to kind of sum this up, as one of our students helped in the pharmacy, just to sum this up, the work in Guyana is multifaceted. The medical mission work has gained us a lot of ground. Even the physicians in Latham send their families to Dr. Dukes when he's down there. So we're trying to meet multiple needs, preparing the preachers, and also meeting the medical needs of these people as well. Love to answer any questions that you might have. Just be sure to give me a call or ask me while I'm here. Thank you for the privilege of talking to you.
My name is Terry Cagle. I am a minister of the Azalea City Church of Christ in Mobile, Sims, Alabama. Appreciate all those who have been able to share and, as has been said by others, go into all the world. What a blessing it is to know that so many great ministries are happening throughout the world. The Great Commission is being observed, and that is a blessing. I'm here to talk about Ukraine. It's a great work, but before I do that, I also would like to echo what Thad says about Christian education. I believe it's a mission field. Several of us in here have worked in Christian education. 10 years of my life was over at Mobile Christian School, where I had 150 kids a year that I was able to teach Bible to. And many of them you saw obey the gospel, and even some of their families. That work is still going strong. I'm very privileged to still be involved in that work as the chairman of the board of trustees there. Recently, I've been added to the board at Fort University, and so love working with that place as well. So Christian education, Snook Christian, all those around, that's a great mission field, and so I appreciate those who support that. But the work in Ukraine is a very special work as well, and it has been a blessing in my life, but I know that there have been many who have been much more involved than even I, and namely Jeff Abrams. Jeff is the minister at the church in Tuscumbia, Alabama, the Tuscumbia Church of Christ. And so Jeff was with Azalea City for about 16 years. I learned and trained under Jeff, worked with Jeff. And Jeff, in 1993, made the decision to go and get involved with the Ukrainian work. And every year since then, he still makes multiple trips, but we've had someone go from Azalea City as well. Our elders are the overseeing eldership until we can help establish elders and get that. Even though it's been a work going for a long time, it's still hard to get men who are at that point where they can serve as elders. But George Spurlock is an elder at our church, and he is over missions also, and he is very involved in the work. Justin and myself have been together. Justin Barnes is with us, youth and family minister at Azalea City. But in 1993, Jeff started going, and Azalea City really got involved in that work. He would go over there and he would teach in the Institute it was kind of like everybody's had a foot in the door to be able to go into these institutes, and the government allow it and be able to teach English, but you're really teaching Bible. And in 1993, a significant baptism occurred while on one of Jeff's trips over there, or his trip over there. Vova Pazi, he is the minister, one of the ministers of the Downtown Church of Christ, which is the biggest church in Ukraine. He was baptized by Jeff. In 1993, though, he was in that institute where Jeff taught, was teaching, and so they set up a Bible study. He said it himself. He was searching for God, and so it was such a blessing, God's providence, that Jeff be there. And so Vladimir, Vova, obeyed the gospel. Well, he and his wife Oksana are tremendous assets. There are so many that I could talk about today, but I won't have time. But they are tremendous assets to the work in Ukraine. But in 1993, he was training for something else. In 1999, he ended up being talked into it by the Eastern Meadows Church in Montgomery, Alabama, to go into Bear Valley. Bear Valley has done a great work over there in training ministers of the gospel, and there are a lot of them that are graduating, going, and the church in Ukraine, in that area, is really spreading in a lot of areas. But our area at Azalea City is Kramatorsk. That's where we're really involved. But along with a great work with just establishing the church and being the overseeing congregation and such, the ABC School, which is a school where it's used to teach English, but the Bible's being taught, was established 15 years ago in 2000, well now almost 16 years ago now, in 2002. And in that time frame, they've now grown to 150 children come there every day, and now it's open to their families. Their families can come in. It doesn't cost them anything. It's supported by the church here and other churches in Mobile as well, and in surrounding areas. But the ABC school has been a great help. And when we go over there, we spend time with the ABC school teaching a vacation Bible school, and then we get to the next event. We usually spend 2 weeks there. And the next event is something else that happened in 2002, and that was the establishment of Camp Americrane. Camp Americrane has really been the primary work that I have been involved in, and Justin's been involved in the last couple of years. Camp Americrane, I was privileged to be part of the first couple, then I took a long break in between, but I have been part of the last several as well. But it's the largest gathering of Christians in Ukraine. Camp Americrane started just like a camp, like Gulf Coast Bible Camp, but now it's grown into a family camp where it's completely paid for all of these people. Now, that means Jeff raises a lot of money. It costs maybe around $40,000, American dollars too, to put that camp on. And so Jeff fundraises for that all year long because it does not cost those from Ukraine anything. And with the war that's happened, it's such a great time and a release that these Christians can come together. Justin and I were part of the 15-year anniversary this past year. We were part of that where 500 people were gathered. Again, the largest gathering of Christians at one time in Ukraine happened at Camp Americrane. Now, Camp Americrane has moved around a couple places, and some of that's because of war areas, but some of it is because you just get better deals, nicer camps, and those things. And so now it takes place in Dnepr. Dnepr used to be called Dnepropetrovsk, but when the Ukrainians got hold of it again, they wanted to drop the part that sounded Russian. And so it's just Dnepr now. And so we also spend time when we go in Dnepr. So it's kind of like a 3 or 4 part place. You go to Kramatorsk and do a vacation Bible school. You go to Dnepr, do a mini vacation Bible school, and then we end up at Camp Americrane. But some of the things that really impressed me besides Camp Americrane, again, it's hard to cram all this in 10 minutes, I know, but is going to the orphanages there. Justin and I, both, of course, love our own children, just like you would love your own children, but we would load up as many of those babies as we could take if it were possible. You just can go and love on them. We take supplies, we take funding. You know how it is. Many of you have been in orphanages like that. The healthcare facilities are not great, But it's such an impactful, and one thing that really touched my life this last time I was there, this past summer, was going to an orphanage in Dnieper where it was a mentally challenged orphanage. The mindset of Stalin is still there with some of these families. That old communist mindset is, well, if the child has a handicap, we just need to get rid of them, and so that's what's happened to these children. And with that, they're just so loving. If they may have Down syndrome or some other handicap, mental challenge or whatever, but man, they were just so loving, so encouraging. I emptied all the money out of my pocket that day, to be able to give them what they needed. It's just such, you're passionate about where you are, but you could spend every dime you have to help these people because it's just such a blessing. I guess I've made 6 or 7 trips, but it's sometimes hard when you have small children to get away. I, like Thad, have a wife who doesn't want to ever fly, but Bo, my son, he's ready to load up and go, and so his mom says she'll go in that, and so maybe very soon I'll be able to take my whole family over and work with them as well. But please continue to pray for Ukraine. The war it doesn't get the media that it once did, but it's still there and it's still ravaged. But I want to close when, brother, tell me your name.
Owen Farley.
Brother Owen back here. As I sat down, he handed me some sheets, and I didn't have my glasses on, so I couldn't read all of it. But he's also involved in work over there, and he showed me a picture, and one of the young men, Stas, I don't know how to say Stas' last name, but Stas is someone that's been to Camp Americrane. We've gotten to know him. Justin got to know him, I guess, this year, maybe last year too. But he is now in Lviv preaching. And we also have another school, White Elephant School in Dnieper, like a school like ABC. And there's a lot I could talk about, but I know my time's up. But thank you for allowing us this forum to be able to sit and talk. But thank you all for what you do. It's very encouraging to me to know that the gospel is preached not only here, but throughout the world. And thank you again.
Good morning. My name is Tom Neal. I'm the involvement minister here at Summerdale Church of Christ. I'm also the marketing director for the international TV show, Getting to Know Your Bible. And that's why I'd like to spend a couple of minutes to talk to you about that. We've talked about a lot of mission programs today, and it's been a privilege to hear about them. But Getting to Know Your Bible is a very unique mission program because it goes over the airwaves. Millions of people can see this show every day. It's recorded right here in Summerdale, Alabama. And from this little town in South Alabama, we go all over the world every day. Billy started this program about 12 years ago, and we've documented over 1,000 baptisms since the program's been on the air. We hadn't got the report from last year yet, but I'm sure we have baptized close to 100 more. We've been averaging close to 100 baptisms a year. I don't know how in the world I ended up being the marketing director for Getting to Know Your Bible. But Billy had enough confidence in me to hire me. I thank the good Lord for the opportunity, because I tell you, when you go places and talk to people and they look you in the eye and they tell you, this program has changed my life, it really does something to you, because it's changed my life. Because I see every time I go out what the gospel can do. It's not what I say or what I do, but it's what the gospel does. And in Jude 3, it tells us to contend for the once given faith. And if there ever was a time in our history of the world, we need to contend for the once given faith. This is an international TV show, but you can turn on your TV anytime, day or night, and hear people preaching. But they're not preaching the once given faith. But that's one thing this show does. It preaches the truth. John 8:32 says, the truth will set you free. And this is what this program does. And this is not just a Summerdale program. This is a brotherhood program where we represent the whole brotherhood of the churches of Christ with the truth. I just finished my first year as marketing director. What a year. It was a whirlwind trip. I started in Castleberry, Alabama, a congregation of about 38. Ended up in West Virginia School of Preaching. In between, I ended up as far west as Tahoe, went to PTP, Colorado to Bear Valley, met a lot of good Christian people. You hear people say negative things about the church all the time. Well, let me tell you something. The church is well. I met some fine people.
Amen.
In New Haven, Alabama was one of my favorite trips. Their women actually still cook chicken. They cut it up and they cook chicken. I had an opportunity to eat the chicken, and then they decided they were going to support us too. Plus, they're also going to give us a fifth Sunday. That's a win-win situation when you can do that. But we have started off, the reason I was actually hired, we've had one brother that's been supporting the program, a brother from the Troy area, Ken Harris. He's been supporting the program the whole time it's been on. It's cost about $300,000 a year to do it. Well, it's like any good well, it's running dry. He's cut our support in half in July. But I'm proud to say, when I first started the program, we were only getting in about $2,500 a month. Had a handful of churches that were supporting us full time. Creekwood was one of them. And I thank everybody for that. But now in October, I get a report every month. We went over $10,000 for the first time. In November, we went over $11,000. We now have 28 churches that support us full time now. I'm looking for 100 churches that can support us, and I'm looking for 1,000 Christians that can help us with at least $20 a month. You know, it's kind of funny, today is National Championship Day. There's going to be a game on tonight where millions of people are going to watch the game. And there's a coach from one of the teams that talks about the process. He says, if you go through this process, you can do this, and we can win championships. Well, he's a pretty good coach, and they have won championships. But what this program does, getting to know this book right here, will get you a lot more than a national championship. It teaches people how to get to heaven. It teaches people how to save their soul. It teaches people how to have a marriage, a successful marriage, how to raise their children, getting to know your Bible. That's what this program does every single day, all over the world. Millions of people have the opportunity to see and hear the gospel preached every day. And that's what we need, because there are people, souls that are dying every day that don't know the truth. This world needs this book more now than any other time. I know we've talked about a lot of different mission works here today, and they're all great. They're all teaching the gospel. But this one work goes to so many every day, what makes it unique. But it's a blessing to me to be able to have the opportunity to see people, to talk to people. And I go around the congregations all over. I go to some big places like PTP where there's 4,000 people, or out to Tahoe where there was 1,500. But there's nothing better than going and able to look in people's eyes, to the small congregations. Size does not matter when it comes to congregations and the love of God. The small congregations are the ones that really love the gospel and want to keep the gospel on the air. And these people still love the gospel, and it's an encouragement to me to see and hear people and look in their eyes and see how much they love it. Now, I think I've set my goals very low, only wanting 100 churches and 1,000 people, because I think over the brotherhood, there's a whole lot more than that want to keep this program going. But that's just my short-term goal. You've got to set goals where you can make it and see it done. But I have the privilege of going around. I'm getting ready to leave. My wife goes with me most of the time. We've been married going on 48 years this year. We're getting ready to leave to go to the Florida School of Preaching down in Lakeland when we get back from that. Then we're going out to Lubbock, Texas, the Sunset. And then we're going in 1st of February, going to Freed-Hardeman to the lectureship there. I not only have the privilege of getting to spread the word about getting to know your Bible, but going to all these different places, hearing some great gospel preaching, and meeting a lot of good Christian people, and spreading the word. We think here in the South that everybody should know about getting to know your Bible, but there's a lot of people that don't. I'm going to Red River, New Mexico in June. Looking forward to that trip. There's about 5 or 6 other places I'm going this year that I hadn't been. I love to come to local congregations and spread the word about the program. But I met a guy that really changed my life, this guy Mike Gant. I was up at PTP, polishing the pulpit. He heard me talking to somebody, and he came up behind me and said, "Hey, are you would get to know your Bible?" I said, "Yes, I am." He's the one that looked at me and said, "Well, y'all changed my life. That TV show taught me how to be a Christian." There was a 91-year-old lady that heard Billy on TV, had been a member of a denominational church. She told her daughter, said, "I need to be baptized." Her daughter tried to talk her out of it. She said, "No, I need to be baptized." She was baptized. She was converted. Now her daughter's been converted. Billy went up to Illinois, had a meeting. She came up there and seen. Billy gave her one of my cards, and I had one of the longest 30-minute conversations. She's now 95 years old. She supports the program. We also this last year converted a couple that were Catholic down somewhere, I think Lakeland, Florida. And anyway, they were converted to the truth. The gospel changes hearts. It touches the hearts, and that's what I try to do. I don't go out and just ask people for money. I give people the opportunity to help spread the gospel. That's what this program is all about. This program is about opportunity to give ordinary people a chance to do something extraordinary by changing lives through this program. Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity.
I'm Owen Farley, and I'm a retired minister. I've preached a few places here on the Gulf Coast, and I'm working here at Summerdale. I had the opportunity to go to the Ukraine. Well, the first time we didn't go to Ukraine. We went to northern Russia in 1992. Dimar Elam, who's already been mentioned, was at Southern Christian at the time, and I called up there and said, "I've heard that they're doing mission work in Russia and the Ukraine." He says, "Yes, they are. We are. We've got a trip going." I said, "Well, my wife and I would like to go." He says, "Well, you can go, but we need your wife." And when I found out they needed my wife because we were going to Vorkuta, and she was the first American woman who had ever been in Vorkuta. At least knew that she was an American woman in Vorkuta. It was where Stalin sent all the exiles. And they had motives, a lot of the gulags and all that type thing, and we were fortunate or unfortunate enough to see some of those places, but we kept hearing about the Ukraine. The Ukraine. Randy Bailey was there, and he talked about what a wonderful place Donetsk and Gorlov and how nice these places were. The next year, my wife and I went back. I taught at Pensacola Junior College, and they had given me a sabbatical because I had been requested to come back and teach in the Language Institute there. What they wanted was courses in American history in English. I taught American history, so that was no problem at all. I taught 4th and 5th year students, and they spoke good English, so I could just do what I always did, teach 6 sections of U.S. history for one semester. But during the rest of the time, I was able to teach, and my wife was able to work with the congregation there in Gorlovka. And we fell in love with the people there, and we started in 1993 and went back every year until 2012. The problem, of course, was the war broke out in 2012. We had everything set. We had left in February of 12 and were supposed to get back actually early in 13. The war was in full swing. And if you remember, they came into a building and with their AK-47 says, "We are taking this building as our headquarters." Well, that was our building. We had transferred it to Bear Valley, but we were still very active. I taught in the preacher training school there every year since the school opened. And when they took it, they just took it. They said, "You've got 2 hours to get the people out of it." Andrew, who was the minister there at the time, still preaches, and Andrew preaches when he can get in, and he has pretty good luck getting in and out. But he preaches on his cell phone, and the members come around and set it up and listen that way. Now, I can vouch for you that that works, because in 2011, Alabama was playing somebody for the national championship. And I'm an Alabama fan since I knew there was such a thing as football. And I wanted to see that ball game. Well, it's not going to be on the Russian or the Ukrainian television. So my son called me at 3 o'clock in the morning when the game started, put it on Skype, and me and him watched the ball game. He fed it to me in the Ukraine on Skype, and we thoroughly enjoy watching the ball game together. So I'm aware of what you can do, and we had the facilities in our building to do just about anything we wanted to do in the way of electronic communication and teaching by electronics and that type thing. What we had and what Bear Valley had done to upgrade it was a mighty good system. They took the whole thing. They gave us 2 hours to get out. That building was a building that my wife had, well, the money had been raised through Randy Bailey and other people, and they gave it to us when we were going in. And the last thing Randy told my wife was, "Buy us a kindergarten building." Well, you should have seen it when we bought it. It looked like it had been bombed. It looked worse than some of these pictures here. You're welcome to look at these. I'll leave them laying up here, but these are reports that we received from people over there. And this building was in terrible shape. But David Fletcher and some other people took over the restoration of the building. And the last time they appraised it appraised at a little over $1 million. But they took it. But they didn't, they said, "We didn't take it. We're just using it until the war's over, and we'll give it back to you then." I don't know what kind of shape it's in, but Andrew checks on it every once in a while. It's still our building, we just can't use it right now. Now, the situation of the war, if you're in the middle of Gorlovka, right near to where the Language Institute and the city square are, there's not much shelling. But if you move out toward the outside of the city, they shell nightly. And they're still doing it. We received a report, it's been 3 months now, I believe, of a young lady and her child. She went out into the yard just to walk the 2-year-old child a little bit to get some exercise. They were killed with a shell that hit in their yard. So people are still being killed. Members of the church are being killed. They are very strongly anti-Church of Christ. As Terry mentioned, people in that area have become Christians, and that really seems to irritate the Russian group that's in this takeover group, because some of the other religious groups are not very active, but the Church of Christ is very mission-minded. We know that. And wherever they are, they're going to be converting people. They're going to be preaching and teaching. And just like we've mentioned with the early church, when the persecution started, they spread and they took it with them. They taught everybody they got a chance to. And you know, these people are finally realizing that's what's happening to them. Andrew was forced out of Gorlovka. Now he's teaching at about 3 different places. Let's see, Costa, another young man, was forced out. He went to where his wife was from, and they've since established a congregation there. And you just constantly hear reports of someone who was forced out of Gorlovka, and they left a congregation in Gorlovka that had about 50 to 75 regular members. And the next thing you hear, they're in some other town 100, 200 miles from Gorlovka, and they've established a congregation that has 10 or 12 members. You know, that is causing, certainly it's terrible to have happen what's happening with the war, but it still works, doesn't it? When you force someone who is a Christian to go somewhere else, he's going to establish a congregation, have some people to meet with before long. When they come together, he don't want to just be there by himself. There's just something about Christianity that you got to share it with somebody else. You got to teach somebody. And when you baptize them, there's just a closeness, a feeling there that doesn't come from very many other things. I say that that's the power of God. That's when the Spirit actually dwells in you. You've got to have other people with the Spirit dwelling in them to associate with. But I could talk on about the Ukraine. If you have any questions, I might be able to answer them, and I might not. But I don't want to hold us here, Billy, so I said that, well, I'm keeping you from getting to eat. I certainly appreciate you giving me the opportunity to talk for just a minute, and please take a look at these if you'd like to. Particularly this one is a good report, and there's one from, I think one from Albert and Irene Bagdasarian, who one of the better known couples over there.
Well, I want to thank all of you men who have made these mission reports today. Hasn't this been refreshing? It's been refreshing to hear what's going on in all of these different places. And this is just the Gulf Coast. And it could be that what you have said today will be an encouragement to people that need to get involved in mission work. We all need to be missionaries.